Hi, N.A.R.C.Troopers. Tonight I want to talk to you about something that that I heard myself say to someone today, and as I was talking to this person, I had some revelations. You know, sometimes you don't know something until you say it to somebody else. You hear yourself saying it, and it was like, "Wow, is that how it is?" And it is how it is. But you didn't know it until you said it. And so the subject was starvation. And I'm writing an article about that right now on medium.com. You can look under Progen Pesqueta and find I'm a writer there, and I'm gonna do a whole article on this because I think it's important. I think it's an important part of the healing journey. So when I say starvation, it's a hunger of the spirit and a hunger of the soul. And in the case of like being, with the person with a personality disorder, well, let's talk about that first, because really what we have here is two people with a personality disorder. And I'm going to venture to guess, and I don't know the percentages, I don't know this, like how many, but I'm going to venture to guess that there are many people in relationships with personality disordered people who also have personality disorders, like cluster C, attachment disorder, addictive personality disorder, and then that cluster B category is the narcissist, the sociopath, and the psychopath. So they make a good pair, and that's what the dynamic was between my husband and I. He was cluster B, I was cluster C, both having personality disorders, and they just fit together like two broken puzzle pieces. So we were both starving when we met each other, hungry, starving, trying to feed our soul and our spirit, and we just had a very different reaction to what happened to us. So let's start with the narcissist. A lot of times when they're growing up, they do not receive what they need in terms of safety, in terms of emotional sustenance, emotional support, any of those things. They are traumatized, they're neglected, abused, abandoned. The things happen to them to cause them to feel shame. And these things are so horrific that the way that they cope with it is that they bury it. And they bury it by taking that inner child part of themselves, and they bind him and gag him and tie him up, throw him in the closet, lock the key, throw away the key, drop it down to the bottom of the deep blue sea, so that there's no chance that that little inner self, that little boy, that inner child is ever getting out of that dark closet. He's been silenced forever and bound and gagged and stashed away in that place so that there's no rescue possible. And when that part of themselves is silenced, murdered, whatever you want to call it, their emotional depth freezes at that point and never moves forward. There's no development after that. It's paralyzed and frozen at that developmental stage, which is sometimes around 5 or 6 years old, many times around that age. And so what happens is when they don't continue to develop, it's almost as if they are a 6-year-old that you're dealing with, a child who doesn't have object constancy, which means they can't see the layers of a person, that they can be good and bad at the same time. They can love them and be upset with them and feeling negative emotions like anger or disgust or contempt at the same time. They don't understand that. People are either black or white, good or bad, harmful or friend or foe, right? And so when the little boy person, and I know this could be a female narcissist too, but I'm just using the male pronoun because of my experience. When he effectively dispatched his little inner self, his feelings went with it and froze him at that period, so that he became incapable of feeling emotions such as love, intimacy, guilt, remorse, any moral compass whatsoever, fear, no fear. They do not have the ability to do that. They don't have the ability to accept blame or culpability or accountability for anything that they do. It's not something that's possible. Their emotional depth remains very shallow. It's an emotional deficit that they have, because they have summarily murdered that part of themselves that could grow and develop true emotions and stuff like that. So anyway, the only emotions that they are left with are envy, jealousy, maybe contempt, frustration, shame, things like that. So that's what happened with my person that had narcissistic personality disorder. It was a developmental pause that became a permanent paralysis in development at that early age, which meant that the emotional depth is just not there. And I want to ask you to think about something. If you have never experienced something, how do you know what it is? And I'm going to get to that with me, because that's an important part of my experience. If you've never experienced something, then how do you know what it is that you need to be experiencing? That's super important. So let's talk about me. I was abandoned, neglected, abused, traumatized very early, probably at birth. My mother was mentally ill and my father was absent. So I was traumatized and abused by my mother. I was abandoned by my father. Rarely saw him. When I did, there was no interaction, no emotional connection, nothing. So as a consequence, my inner little girl, my inner child, the little mini me, believed that there were only two ways to be human, to feel complete or to feel whole. The first was to be performing, doing things, and achieving and intellectualizing my lack of completeness, my fragmented self, my lack of being whole, could be completed by intellectualizing. So that meant that I was a straight A student, top of the class. I was the best dancer in dance class. I was the best actress in theater. I was the best writer in of all the people that were writers. I was the most creative, the most this. I was the prettiest. I was the most, I was just the most and the best, and had to be those things, because if I didn't, then I had no value and no worth, and I would just disappear and cease to exist. The second way, which was much more toxic, is that I would attach myself to other people to have external validation. And through attaching myself to other people, I would draw from them a sense of completeness. Just like the Jerry Maguire movie when he says, "You complete me." Wow, that's kind of a codependent, weird, toxic dynamic there. He should be complete without her, and then have the relationship as just, extra icing on the cake. He shouldn't need another person to complete him. That's pretty pathological and unhealthy. No boundaries there. Anyway, so that was me. I attached to different people all the time, and through them I created identity, worth, value, meaning, wholeness, and a feeling that everything's going to be okay. Everything was okay. Everything's copacetic. Did that with my first husband, did it with the relationship, my second relationship that kind of was wedged in the middle, and then with my second husband, the last one, the narcissist. I did it with him. I felt like I would cease to exist, that I would die, that I could not thrive, that I would just disappear without him. When you have that kind of unhealthy personality disorder that says you must be addicted and attached and have these no boundary relationships with another human in order to feel like you have any value at all, or that you can even live, then that's not okay. So my little child is always terrified that if I'm not smart enough, performing and achieving enough, or if I don't have a person to love me into wholeness, to attach to create wholeness, that I will disappear, vanish, just cease to exist. I will die. I will literally die. So imagine these two little inner selves, his inner little boy and my inner little girl. I didn't turn off the feelings like a narcissist does. I found a way to keep all of my emotions and my capacity to love and to have a moral construct and to be faithful and loyal and have fidelity and to help others and sacrifice for them and genuinely, authentically know the difference between right and wrong and feel guilt and remorse when I didn't do the right thing and stuff like that. I'm quite capable I've kept my emotions alive and intact. I'm an empath. And if you look about what that is, I think I'm a super empath. And that's a story for another day, but I'm just very sensitive and in touch and intuitive about other people. I can read them, I can feel them, I know them immediately and can connect and tell them all kinds of things about themselves. I'm very sensitive about things like that, and it's almost a spiritual kind of thing. I've perceived myself as a healer, that I want to heal people through making these video blogs, through writing my articles on Medium, and through making my podcast. I feel like I'm a healer, and I have to create these things to heal, and I have to create these things it continues to be a source of validation and a source of external stamp of worthiness to be alive, to continue to exist. If I did not do any of these things and just sat around and watched TV all day, then I couldn't survive or thrive or even exist, because I would not be doing something. So imagine those two children. The only difference between our inner childs, my husband's and mine, because they were both traumatized, abused, neglected, abandoned, and were terrified and filled with shame, both of us. I mean, they were so, so similar, except for the way we reacted to all of that. What he did with his inner self and how he responded by numbing the emotions and sort of just shriveling up and having this moral atrophy and dying inside. His reaction was very different from mine. I didn't do that. I just learned to get that validation through my achievements and through attaching to other people. But I kept the emotions. And so, but essentially, I felt that our inner selves had experienced something quite similar. And it was a very long time before I realized the extent of what he had done to himself and what he was not capable of, because I thought he was like me. I thought he was just like me, damaged, wounded, seeking external validation in order to live. And that creates a starvation syndrome, I'm going to call it. And the starvation syndrome says we're always starving, we're always hungry, we're always needing that fix. For the narcissist, it's attention, adoration, admiration, constant stroking of their ego, people telling them, oh, you're just so awesome, you're the greatest, you're the best. And he developed a false persona, a false self that was completely the most charismatic, charming, polite, courteous, sweet, helpful, kind, even had the dimples and the cute little smile and the gentle little touch and just this whole creation that he created that wasn't even real. It allowed him to get that fuel, that supply, that validation from other people. Mostly female, maybe some other people, but mostly female. That's what helped him get it. He learned how to get it that way by using those charms, those things. He used his dimples, he used his sex, he used his charm, he used all those things to be able to get it. But it was a hunger in him. It was an emptiness in him. It was a feeling of being hollow and starved and hungry. And I experienced the exact same thing. My hunger and starvation and emptiness and hollowness was filled with my achievements and my attachments to other people who validated me and let me complete my identity through them. So while we consumed fuel differently, we were both empty and starving on the inside. And so understanding this is important, right? Because I'm sure some of you, whether you're the narcissist or whether you're the target, the victim, the person that the narcissist got tangled up with, whichever it was, I'm pretty sure that whole starvation syndrome was part of it. I'm pretty sure, because you know how I know this? If you were healthy, if you were full, if you had received all that you needed to when you were young and growing up, you wouldn't need, you wouldn't be hungry, you wouldn't need that external fuel the way he and I do. Even though we do it differently, even though it damaged us in different ways, we still don't have the sustenance, the nourishment that we need to be whole and complete that comes from within because of what happened to us as children. Super important to understand this, guys. Really, really important to wrap your mind around what I'm saying. Because if you are that person who had that starvation syndrome and you were hungry, that means probably you didn't have the right boundaries. And without the right boundaries, that's how you got tangled up in a relationship that ended up in a traumatic situation that just traumatized you further and ended badly and tragically, and you're right back at the whole emptiness again. That you're right back at that whole starvation syndrome. So if you can fill yourself somehow, and here's the biggest thing, I know what I need to do. I know that I need to learn how to provide the nourishment and fuel for myself without reaching outside of myself. And once I do that, I can have a healthy relationship with healthy boundaries. And once I do that, I can be whole and not terrified and needy and clingy and incapable of being a whole, complete, healthy person without another person that I'm attached to. I can do that if I can fill that emptiness within. I think for the narcissist, it's too late. What is missing inside of them, they don't have the ability to fill it up. And because of their false self, their false world, their magical thinking, their delusional, illusional, rabbit hole kind of alternate reality, they don't even believe that they need to do this work. They are so comfortable with getting fuel the way they do that is how it goes. The feelings that they need to commit to doing the work that they need to do to repair what's missing on the inside, it's not there. They don't have that. And if they don't have that, then they can't do that. But for those of us who don't have cluster B personality disorders, our emotions are still intact. I think we can do the work. So here's the thing. It's the hardest part. Once you get to the part where you wrap your head around what your situation is and you know the work that needs to be done, the next question is how? How do we become complete? How do we self-partner, self-advocate, do self-care, and grow that inner nourishment and self so that we become complete and full and no longer starving and hungry and terrified that we're going to cease to exist if we stop performing, stop achieving, and stop attaching to other people. Well, there is the work. There is the work. And that's where I am. I know what I need to do. I know what happened to him. I know what we're each capable of. And it's horrible. It's not fair. It is a formidable task. But, if you're in my shoes and you're in this place where you know what I'm saying is describing what is happening with you, then just know you have to accept that they're not going to be okay. They can't, but you can. And the whole key is that we have to figure out how to finally, once and for all, become whole and self-partner, self-care, and take care of that inner child. We need to soothe her, calm her down, sit her down and say, listen, I'm here and I'm not going to let anyone abandon you or hurt you again, because I'm not going to abandon you. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here for you. Let's do this together, hand in hand. And then we figure out how to do that, how to do it, because we can do it. I have this fantasy sometimes that my little girl and his little boy are going to find each other and rescue each other and hold on to each other, and that we're going to somehow come out of that dark together, and that I can help him and he can help me, and we can heal and we can live happily ever after. We can stop searching and hunger, having that hunger and that insatiable, obsessive, compelling drive to have that fuel, to seek that fuel that's outside of ourselves, that we can be that for each other, that we can be that for ourselves, that we will have a way to be whole together so we can be together and be the best selves that we just haven't been able to be. I have that fantasy, I have that dream. Sometimes I actually wake up in the night after dreaming about that, seriously, that, I was able to get him out of that dark room, and I took off everything that had him tied up, and he got his feelings back. He got those emotions back. It somehow brought it all back to life, and the parts that him were dead, they just regenerated and came back to life like some miracle healing. I dream that because I want that for him. But I have to let that go because it's a dream. I can't help him. I can only help me. And I'm having a hard time even doing that. So if you're in the same boat that I'm in, you have to accept the reality. We can't save them, help them, heal them back into the life that they deserve. Part of them died a long time ago, and their false self is all they know, and it's real to them. It's real to them, and they don't even believe any of this. They can't. It's too painful, and it's too late. So we can only work on ourselves to be whole. And that's how we recover. That's how we heal. That's how we mend. Because we can feel maybe too much. And we can still dream, I guess. But, dreams are dreams. And that's all they are. So N.A.R.C.Troopers, that's my message for today. Turn inward and do the work. Take that little person, that little child in you, and help her and heal her. Learn how to be whole without having to look away from yourself, outside of yourself. You have everything you need in you. You just need to figure out how to grow it and feed it until it gets big and fat and plump and juicy, and you're not hungry anymore. You don't have to be starving and doing all these things that you have to do to survive and to not disappear, to not cease to exist, because you will have everything you need and you'll be whole, and you're not going to disappear, and it's going to be okay. I'm sorry that we can't help them. And I can only hope and pray that we can figure out how to help ourselves. Because that's where the work is. And that's where the hope is. So let's get busy, guys. Let's get busy and figure out how to do this. Because, many of us have friends and family and children who look at us and they know that there's something wrong with us for staying with the narcissist, for making the choices we've made, for constantly being the way we are, starving and hungry and trying to constantly feed. We need to stop it. Stop the cycle for them so that it stops here. And then there's health and wholeness and happiness, and life goes on. I wish the best to all of you and hope that you understand what I'm trying to convey to you. It's very real, very raw, and very honest. I'm not the only one. I know you understand. So, much health to you. Keep going, soldiers. Much love. Bye-bye.